ocean crew, and we up in our growlings when people change, but not us. And we just chillin', kicking it, kissed by the sun. Could be soaked to the skin in the mall soon. I know she got the good vibes when seasons change, but we're the same. Even if I lost all my money, the zero runs deep, honey. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. Even if my jokes aren't funny, my tongue tied up on it. And I don't need to speak a single word, 'cause you got me holding, holding. 'Cause you got me holding, holding.
Hey, welcome, welcome. How we going? Welcome to our GA4 webinar, GA4 Decoded, Unraveling the Enigma of GA4 reporting. Just feel free to put any questions that you might have in the chat, and then I can answer them as we go. So yeah, who's ready to learn a little bit about GA4? Cool. Let's get going. So we'll just start a little bit about who we are, or who Unbound is. Unbound is one of only 23 Google Premier partners in New Zealand and Australia. We're the only Google Premier partner outside of Auckland. We specialize in ads, predominantly Google ads and analytics. And we're a team of strategists and campaign managers that help businesses all over New Zealand get the most out of their online advertising. Yeah, and we work with some of the top New Zealand companies across a range of different industries. So a little bit about me. So I've been in advertising and marketing for probably over 17 years. Started in traditional media and obviously moved into digital. Unbound's been around since 2015, so I founded that back then. Google Ads and Analytics certified. Love a good cup of Joe down at the local cafes or in the office. A beard aficionado, and do some powerlifting in my spare time. Right. So what are we gonna learn today? All right, I'm just having a look, seeing how we're going on the stream, seeing if we're getting some viewers. 27 on so far, so that's pretty good. Right, so what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to talk very briefly about setting up GA4, and that's more so to make sure that you know that you've got GA4 set up correctly. And then we're going to go through a little bit about like little kind of lingo, different terminology when it comes to Google Analytics 4 and analytics. Then we're going to talk a little bit about basic navigation, navigating your way around the GA4 interface. And then we're going to delve into the reports and the explorations and the advertising tabs, which are all in GA4. And then we'll have a brief look at Looker Studio and what that can do to supplement your dashboarding with GA4. And then we'll cover any questions that you might have. Yes, Kathy, this is being recorded and it'll be found on YouTube at the end. So if you do, if you can't watch the whole webinar, we'll put this up after the fact, and we'll also send out anyone that signed up on Eventbrite the slides so you can review them as well. Righto, setting up GA4. So there's really two ways that you can set up GA4. You can either just add the the gtag.js code which Google gives you at the setup phase and just put that directly onto your site. It's probably, we wouldn't consider it the best way of setting it up. It won't allow you to sort of configure the events as easily as, say, Google Tag Manager, which we think is the best way. And it usually might, and it'll probably require some support to do that. So if you are on a platform which you have a developer, you may need them to add the code. And obviously any event tracking code, you might need to have some custom script, and it also doesn't support the server-side tracking. So we usually implement through Google Tag Manager, and it's then easy to add sort of custom events to the site, and you can also add other tracking events like the metapixel off the back end of your Google Tag Manager setup. And then once you've got Tag Manager installed, you don't need to obviously ask the developer to deploy any code like you do with the gtag.js. But it can be a little bit tricky, especially if there's no data layer. But it does support server-side tracking. Yeah, sorry, Dennis. Yeah, I did a test earlier with the link, and it broke. So the two most recent emails that I sent have the correct link for the YouTube. But yeah, technology, eh, Dennis? Whew. Right. So there's, when setting up GA4, they've changed it a little bit in the recent months, where when you go to set up, they'll give you the option of like how you want the report to look with the business objectives. And so you can either select just baseline reports, which will look a bit like this, which is the one that they've kind of had right from the get-go. Or if you select some of the other objectives, these top four, your report interface will look a little bit like this on the left, on the right hand side, where you've got generate leads, drive online sales, brand awareness, and examine user behavior. Now, the actual reports inside of these are actually the same in both. They've just changed the order around a bit to fit under one of these different business objective categories. So it's just important, when you do set it up to set. So, I mean, we will often just set ours up using the baseline reports, because that's kind of what we're sort of familiar with. But if you have set yourself up using one of these other methods, you can always go back through into the library, which I'll show you in a minute, to basically bring those other reports in. It's also important that when you actually set up your GA4 is to make sure your enhanced measurements are turned on, so you can get this extra layer of data available. And just on that, so GA4 basically has 4 different levels of events, and we'll cover what events are in a second in the lingo section, but it's just important to know what this is from the sort of start. So you've got automatic events, so these are just collected automatically. You can't really sort of adjust these. And then you've got enhanced measurement, which is the one that we just turned on in that setup stage just then. And then there's these recommended events, and you can see the full list of what the recommended events that Google has in the Google documentation. And then you've got custom events. So you can create any event you want in GA4 and trigger it obviously in any way you want, and name it whatever you want. But it's always best to kind of go through and obviously either have an enhanced measurement event for it or a recommended event before you start setting up custom events, just to keep things nice and tidy. And then, really Google Analytics 4 is quite different from Universal Analytics. Everything's based on events. It's not kind of session based and page view based, like Universal Analytics. So when we go through all the reporting today, you'll notice everything kind of speaks about events, and everything's event based. And there are no views anymore, which is a little bit of a frustration. Everything comes in as a data stream, and some of the lingo is different, like in terms of different metrics. There is a bounce rate, and I'll talk about this again a bit later on in the session, but they're trying to get more of kind of this sort of lingo around engaged sessions rather than bounces. So probably kind of more positive language than negative language. So if you've set up your GA4 and you don't see all these reports in this reports menu, you can just go down into the library and you can turn on these reports, and you'll be able to see which ones these are turned on or which ones are published and what they're published under. And you can just go in and actually publish or unpublish these. So for example, Search Console in this respect is unpublished, but you need to connect your Search Console first before you can publish this, and it'll just appear on the left-hand side menu. Right, let's cover a little bit of lingo. We got up to 39 people on the webinar. That's great. So some of the lingo we'll look at is metrics, dimensions, events, parameters, values, and segments. So those are some of the things that Google call things. So metrics and dimensions are kind of two things that you'll see in most reports. So metrics are usually a quantitative measure. They measure data, and they're often numbers and percentages. And dimensions are obviously things that we're measuring, so they're qualitative. So they describe the data. So as an example of that, one of the reports that we look at all the time, being an online advertising agency, is the source medium report. So in this instance, the source medium is a dimension. So we've got Google /CPC. So that's Google paid search, Google organic search, Facebook referral, and then email marketing. And then the metric would be like visitors. So that's a number. But again, it could be a percentage, a time. So when we start looking at the reports, it's often you'll have the dimension on the left-hand side, and then in the report there'll be a metric on the right-hand side, or a number of metrics on the right-hand side. And then, so like I was saying with Google, they've got this events, parameters, and value structure in GA4. So everything is an event. It's some sort of interaction that happens, and a parameter will be some way of describing that event. And then each parameter then has a value assigned to it. So in the example here, we've got a page view as an event. So every time someone views a page, and then a parameter on that page view might be page location. And then that's actually the URL of the page as the value. And then you also have the event page view, but another parameter that you've got onto that. So events can have a number of different parameters on them. It's page title, and then you can have the name of the page as the page title, like that. Another event that we've got is a scroll event. So if someone's actually scrolling down the page, a parameter might be engagement time in milliseconds. And then you've got 2,400 milliseconds as the value. So that's the kind of the way now that Google structures that data. Now segments, this is the way that I guess data can be broken up. So again, if we're looking at different users on the site, it's really about how you categorize these different users into different sort of subsets. So some examples could be sort of geography. So where are they in the country? Could be device. It could be traffic source. And we'll have a look at some of this further into the reporting when we actually see some of the reports that are available and how we can segment that data. So now we jump into the basic navigation side of things. So some of the sort of first things you'll see is, did I miss one? Is this button at the top here, when you jump into your reports, is add a comparison. So there's a lot of there's a lot of reports that have this at the top. So most of the standard reporting you've got this add comparison button. And so if you click through into that, you can then obviously add a dimension to segment that data. And so in this instance here, we've added, again, our favorite source medium section, and we just want to see the Google paid search in the report. And so if we look at that, now we're looking at all users compared to just those that are coming from paid search. So we can see the line in the chart of all users. The orange one represents those just coming from Google paid search, and the top one is all users over that time. So this is just a basic concept you can take across any of the reports in GA4. And then another one of basically navigating around the place is the date selector. So this is found at the top right-hand corner of the Google reports. And so this allows you to break down the report you're looking at by a date range. And you can also add a comparison date range to that as well. So it just means if you want to go back over a longer period of time or a shorter period of time to look at the data. And then another one that Google's added in to the GA4, which wasn't sort of really available in Universal Analytics, is this insights tag. So it's trying to provide a more AI-based, conversational-based approach to getting data. So if you click this on the reports that have it, you can then query the data based on some questions. So in this example here, we've gone into basic performance, and then we've asked, what are the top pages and screens by views, and it's given us a little report in the sidebar of the top pages by the number of views. And then the one you'll sort of default to at the top is the home screen. This just gives you a really basic rundown of some basic metrics, and then obviously some of your most recently accessed reports. And so let's just jump into the reports now so we can get stuck in. Again, if you've got any questions anywhere along, if you see a report that you want to ask some questions on, feel free just to pop it in the chat, and then I can come back to you and either in the chat or just I'll shout it out on the webinar. Righty ho. So reports. So these are basically broken down into report snapshot, the real-time report, acquisition, engagement, monetization, and retention. And then we've got a few other reports just under here, which are under the headline user, and these are user attributes and tech. So we'll just go through each one of these so you can have a better understanding. I mean, the snapshot report is what it sounds like. It's a little bit like the home report, where you're just going to get a snapshot of some high level sort of numbers, and in this case, you've also got a kind of a real time view of like the last 30 minutes. So it's not something that's going to give you a lot of detail about how your site's doing, but it is going to give you some top level numbers coming through. It's also worth mentioning when you are actually looking at any of these reports that the chart will often be defaulted onto a particular metric or a particular dimension, like in this case it's users. So if you wanted to see how it's trending over time, it's just a case of clicking onto the other dimension that you're wanting to look at. So in this case, total revenue, and it will actually change the chart underneath it. So, and that's the same across any of the other reports that you look at. You can just click on those. So the reports that we're going to look at are going to be based on the lifecycle view, which is the default kind of reporting view. If your one is, as we discussed earlier, the kind of goal-based view, all the reports that we're going to cover are in there, but they're obviously all going to be in a slightly different order depending on which goals you've selected. And if you can't see the report, you can just go into the library to find that report and add it to your dashboard. So if we sort of start, okay, so I've skipped the real-time report. I don't sort of find the real-time report sort of super useful in terms of data analysis. But what that report does show you is people that are on your site at the moment and what they're doing. I prefer to look back at the starter to do the analysis. So we're just going to start with acquisition, the acquisition report. So acquisition, it's all about how people are finding you. So this is kind of what these reports under here are trying to do. So it's that kind of that sort of touch point of how they've come to your site, whether they're a first-time user, a new user, or a previous user. It's how they've come to your site. So each one of these different reports has like an overview tab, and so which will show you again some high level numbers similar to that snapshot report, um, in some graphs. But when you start sort of breaking down, the acquisition report has this um, traffic acquisition, which by default shows up as the session default channel grouping. But if you want to change that dimension, if we want to show our favorite source medium view, we can easily just click on that to change that and select source medium, and then that will allow us to break that down into that view. You can also add a secondary dimension to the report. So, and then that just means you can go up to this top plus button and add a second dimension to that, which will allow you to get, say, a campaign in addition to your channel groupings. And then on the right hand side, as we sort of said, we've got our dimensions here, and then we've got our metrics, so users, sessions, engaged sessions, etc. So you can then sort of have a good view of what your audience is doing, where it's come from, what they've actually, are they engaged, are they not engaged, etc. So if you want to customize the report, you're like, I really want to see bounce rate, and bounce rate's not showing. You can just go up to this little pencil icon at the top right hand corner, and then that allows you to jump in and customize the dimensions and the metrics that are showing in this report. Again, if you wanted to save the report that the dimension showing is source medium instead of channel group, you can go in and change that and save it, and then it will always come up. If you wanted to see, line charts or bar charts instead of line or bar charts or whatever it might be, you can change it here and save it. In this instance, we've looked at selecting the metric, and then we can obviously add in bounce rate to that as a metric, and then that'll add bounce rate into this column here. So we can also sort the metrics, and if we sort the metrics, so in this instance here, we've sorted conversions by our highest converting channel grouping, and that will also change the chart in the top view as well when we're selecting this. So Google's just allowing us to, if we're focusing in on a particular metric, it's going to also reflect that in other places. So now jumping through to the engagement, this is kind of what people are doing. So again, a lot of it's based on the events. So if we sort of think about Google Analytics 4 is very event based, the engagement view is just showing you what events people are looking at. So the first one we'll look at is the events tab. So this just lists every event that's being fired. So you should probably find your most triggered event is the page view event, because every time someone opens a page, it's going to fire this page view event. And then you can obviously go across and see how many page views are being counted, and then also how many unique users are doing that, and then obviously the event count per user. So in this case, the page views per user is going to be this divided by this. And then you can just go down and see what the different events that are being triggered across the site. So, and then of course, one of the most important event types is actually conversions. So these are kind of the things we want people to do on the site. And so it's really about making sure you're setting up their conversions in the setup stage, so that the events that you want to be conversions, things like add to cart, purchases, view cart, are actually coming into this view, so you can actually see them. And they'll also show in the conversion, metric in other reports as well. So if you haven't marked them as conversion, they're not going to show in any of the conversion data. And then the next, I've kind of like just included both of these because they show very similar data, is the pages and screens report. So basically the pages and screens, pages are more kind of for websites and screens are more for apps, because GA4 can be used for websites as well as apps. And so the only difference is really the pages and screens report is going to show all pages and screens that have basically been viewed on the site, where the landing page is going to show where people just landed when they came to the website for the first time. So it kind of gives you very similar data, but sort of different data as well, because you may want to know, where are people coming as the first point of contact on the site, or you may just want to look at what's the most popular, pages on my site. So on this example here, we've got this is kind of Google's demo site, which is their Google Merchant Shop. Is that we've got the kind of the drink, lifestyle and Google merchandising store as one of the top pages after the homepage. So that's kind of what people are most looking at, most visiting. And then the final kind of view in the lifecycle reporting section of the reporting tab is the monetization tab. Monetization spelled with a Z, of course, because everything has to be American with Google. And this is kind of for the e-commerce people, because it's all about getting customers. If you're a lead generation business, so someone's filling out forms, clicking on a mail to link, something like that, those will all be found in the conversions tab. They won't actually come up in any of the purchase or monetization tabs. So this is really for people that have an online shop, so that you can actually see, how much revenue you're making, and how many purchases we're coming through. So if we look at the purchase data, kind of one of the primary views is the e-commerce purchases tab. So it's an important thing for those e-com users to know, what are the most popular products, both what are the most popular viewed products, but what are the most popular products added to the cart, and the most purchase products. So in this case here, we can see that the Google Campus bike is the most popular product that's viewed. And it's also, but it's probably not the most added to cart product. We've got the Google Eco Tea with far less views, but far more people adding it to the cart. But no one's buying the Google Eco Tea in this example. But there has been two bikes sold. So that's kind of how this report. So it works from sort of left to right in terms of, viewing the product, adding to cart, purchasing, and then revenue. It can sort of be looked at also in another view, where you can look at the user purchase journey. So this will give you how many people have started a session at 100%, and then just shows the percentage of people going through each different stage of the purchase journey. So this is quite similar to a chart in the original Universal Analytics, in terms of that purchase journey map. So for those that have looked at it, looked at Universal Analytics quite a bit, this is probably one of the most familiar charts you'll find in GA4. And then obviously you can break down this by, say device or channel, or other dimensions to get a better handle on what your different customer segments are doing over time. Righto. So that's all the life cycle reporting. Um, the other ones down the bottom here are user attributes. So this is kind of more of the sort of the audience section in Universal Analytics, where you could look at different, locations and technologies and that sort of thing, um, that you know that Google's got to offer. So in this chart, in terms of user attributes, you've got this overview tab, which is sort of showing you, the countries, the cities, gender, age, as much as Google can kind of tell that information, and kind of interests. And then obviously you can delve deeper into each of these different reports by clicking the button there. So if you want to sort of see more specifically, which city or which region, you can click into the countries and delve deeper into the report. And then the tech, that's again looking at, devices and, other, what operating system they're using. So kind of very similar sort of reporting. And again, another view that's probably quite similar to the Universal Analytics is this section here, where you can sort of delve more into the actual attributes of the users and the devices that you're using to view your website. So I thought I'd just talk a little bit about some of the frustrations that people are having with GA4, because you probably got some of your own, and maybe you want to share some in this little section. But one of the ones we're sort of having coming up, especially if you're looking over a long sort of time frame, is that there's no way to sort of default your data to to week or month. So if you are looking at a longer time frame, Google will sort of do that for you, and there's no way to control how they group that. So you may need to obviously look at using, say, Data Studio to really kind of look at that data that you want to look. So someone just asked about the threshold data thresholding little things in there. So you've got here. So Google may only use a sample of your data in this report. And so you'll get these little warnings where the data that's using for this report is at a data threshold. So it's not using a full set of data, but it's extrapolating using that sample. So that's what that little triangle means. And then someone else has asked about the not set. So again, probably in one of my favorite reports. I'll probably just scoot back to see if I can find a example of that in the source. Find it. Did I have a... Maybe I didn't have a report on that. I might jump to that a bit later. So the not set is often when you're getting a traffic source that does not have a tag. So it's not it's not coming from a referral. It's not coming from organic search. It's not coming from paid search where you've tagged it. It's coming from someone that has clicked on either typed your web address directly into the site, or you've run some advertising or another link somewhere on the internet, probably not on another site that they've clicked on. And so Google Analytics can't determine where that traffic has come from, so it'll put it as not set or direct traffic. So really the goal of your marketing is to try and minimize the amount of direct or not set traffic that you've got coming to your site. And the ways you can do that is by tagging all your advertising campaigns and making sure you're, so if you're running ads on Facebook, make sure you add, tracking parameters. If you're running ads on Google ads, make sure you're setting up the auto tagging. If you're doing anything like Stuff or MediaWorks or NZ Herald or whatever it might be, make sure you give them a link with a tracking tag on it, a UTM tag, because that's the way that Google Analytics will be able to sort of categorize that data into the correct source or medium in campaign. So yeah. Another frustration is missing metrics. So one of the ones that we kind of stumble across is there's no conversion rate in GA4, which is a bit odd. But I mean, you can sort of calculate it, and you can, if you're doing a data studio report, you can create a custom metric and put the number of conversions over the number of users you've got, or sessions you've got, which will give you a kind of a conversion rate. And then the other one was they didn't have bounce rate in there when they first released GA4. They have put it in there most recently, but it's not kind of like a standard reporting metric. They kind of sort of hide it away as if they're ashamed about it. They're kind of in more favor of using this term called engaged users. So a lot of the standard reports will have kind of this thing like engaged users coming through. No, Paul, there's no change to UTM tags in GA4, so you can use the same format you've been using. So UTM source, UTM medium, UTM campaign, UTM content, etc. So you can just Google URL builder or Google URL builder, and Google have one in their developer kind of library, which allows you to, and they just talk you through how to build your UTM tags, and then they'll give you a link that you can copy and paste, or you can create into a short link. So so another frustration is no views, which means that there's no filters available, which means that we can't sort of, because we'd use filters a lot of the time. Like if you go to your reports at the moment, if you're in your source and medium view, you'll have a lot of different versions of, say, Facebook. So there'll be the mobile version of Facebook. There'll be Facebook, just the standard one. And so what we'd often do is we kind of like put a filter in to like make sure they're all just the same. It's just facebook.com, so that we could kind of have a better sense of like the data, rather than having 3 or 4 different versions of Facebook. We just have one in that filter. But obviously with GA4 there are no filters, so we can't do that. So all the data that's in there is just showing as the different versions, which can be a little bit confusing. A lot of people obviously finding the layout, it's different. It's maybe a bit more confusing. So that's something that's a bit of a frustration. And obviously it's not as easy to edit the reports and customize the reports, in GA4 as it was in the old Universal Analytics. And there's probably a lot more reports in Universal Analytics that were just a click away. And so Google have kind of built it, which is the thing we're going to cover next, is the explorations, which is really about kind of building your own report to get the information that you want, because all the data is there. It's just a case of putting it together. So yeah, we're doing a recording of the session, and it'll be posted on YouTube. So if you are watching it and you don't have time to watch the whole webinar, you can just head across to our YouTube channel and watch it again. If you have signed up on Eventbrite for the event, we'll also post out the link to the YouTube recording, and also the slides, just so you've got reference to those as well. So yeah, so we're just jumping into exploration. So this is kind of probably one of the big changes, that Google's kind of made with GA4. Like a lot of their reporting, it's kind of down to you to kind of like get the data you want. All the data's there, and you just have to put it together. So if we kind of open up the explorations tab, which again is just the third kind of menu down on the left hand side, you open up a view like this, and you can either create a blank exploration, or probably the best thing to do is probably to start with this freeform report to start with, and then you're basically presented with this this view here. So it's kind of broken down into sort of 3 columns. So we'll just go through each of these. So the column on the left is it's called variables, and this is kind of where you kind of set up what you want to look at. So if you're wanting to look at different segments, you can sort of add those to this segment section here. If you're wanting to look at different dimensions, you can add all those to this dimensions here, and then your metrics here. So again, right from that start when we went through the lingo, we kind of now know what the dimensions and the metrics and segments are in this report. We know what they're trying to tell us. This is kind of describing the data, this is measuring the data, and this is breaking down that data. So once you've got everything in this kind of left-hand column, you can then just drag and drop it into this next column, this middle column. So you can just drag and drop these into the middle column, which is basically going to be how you want to view the report. So you can add rows, columns, and then values. So if we look at this this report that we're generating here, it's a table. So that's the visualization that we've selected. And then in the rows, we've got the cities. And then in the columns, we've got the devices. So mobile, desktop, tablet, and then a total. And then we're breaking down active users. So we can sort of see in Toronto, they had 2,309 users on mobile. They had 458 on desktop, and they had 49 on tablet, which is basically a total of 2,813. So obviously, New York, Mountain View, a greater percentage of desktop users than mobile users for some reason. So now we can sort of see in this table report, we can get a bit of information about what we're trying to view. So it's just really having a good think about what information you want to get from the report. So as I said at the top here, it gives you the option of how you want to visualize that data. So as we saw in that first example, it was just a table. So that's a basic table view. But we could also do like a pie chart. So we can visualize it that way. Or the other options is a line chart, a bubble chart, a bar chart, or if you're doing things like geography, you can do a map. So there's kind of options to basically just edit this. Again, it's free form, so you can kind of edit this with the data that you want to see at any one time. I guess the differences between this and Data Studio is you are still reasonably kind of limited in terms of the functionality and the way this data is presented, in this format. Whereas we'll see when we get to the Data Studio reporting, you've got a lot more freedom about how you present that data and how you segment that data, and the ability to create custom dimensions or custom metrics with the data, so calculated metrics, etc. So the next option is this funnel exploration. So again, sort of geared towards viewing a kind of a path on the website. People basically starting a journey and then going through to different pages. How far are they getting, to say purchase in this example? And then another sort of similar way, this path exploration view or exploration can be, I guess, quite an interactive experience where you can sort of like explore different pathways by, in this instance, we've got, page titles and events that we're going down, but you can customize this report to be page titles down multiple different steps to see, people that are, going to the drinkwares section, what event followed from that. And then if we obviously look at people who have recent active users, what event do they do from this page? So you can sort of start going down this this path of users to kind of an endpoint, where people are viewing a certain page or purchasing or this sort of thing. So again, this is probably another similar report than to what we saw in the Universal Analytics. They had a very similar path exploration report in that, so they've kind of carried it across. And then another one we can look at is this segment overlap, which again, if you're trying to look at how similar are different segments, we've got sort of age segments or mobile traffic segments, how similar are, how many people aged 25 to 54 are mobile users or tablet users. We can sort of visualize those crossovers with this exploration. And again, I think it's just with, these explorations, it's kind of just trying to think about, how do I want to visualize my data? How is it going to tell me that story that I want to know? So, and it's just sort of having a bit of a play with the different sort of visualization techniques and the different segments and different dimensions and metrics to see if it's going to kind of come up with something that's going to give you some information about your website users, your customers. And then we've got this this template gallery where we sort of looked at a few of these that are under the template gallery. But you've also got these use cases in industry. So these are kind of pre-built reports for, specific use cases. So for example, you've got the acquisitions, who's buying off me. There's conversions one, there's a user behavior one, and there's also one that predicts top spenders. And then you've got these two down here, e-commerce and gaming. So if you're an e-commerce business, you may want to jump into, the e-commerce report, which will tell you a bit about your customers. So I just, again, jumped into the acquisitions report. I mean, again, as we all know, very close to my heart with the source medium type information. And this is just telling us, how many active users and how many people converting from each of these different channels. And then the final kind of report on the left-hand column is the advertising report. And so this just provides information about which, sorry, just reading another question. So if you want to see bounce rate, so this is Joe asking this question. So if you want to see bounce rate, you can add it in as a metric. So if you're in the exploration, to add bounce rate, you just need to go down to the if we go down to the metrics here, and you can just search for bounce rate, and then you can add that one into the report as a metric. If you're in the standard reports, you can add that metric by customizing the report. So going up to the little pencil or pen in the top right hand corner and just clicking that, and you can add that bounce rate as a metric. So Paul wants a link to the YouTube channel. I should know this off the top of my head, Paul, but I don't. So I'll just quickly look this up and grab you the link. I can probably give you the just pop that in there in the chat. So it's just youtube.com/unboundnz. Right, back to advertising reports. So the advertising snapshot. So this is kind of where you sort of see if you're doing any kind of form of online advertising, it's going to show you that default channel path. So you can sort of see your paid search ads there. But more importantly, it's going to help determine if you are doing, say, paid search. If you've got your ad account linked or you're importing data from Facebook or LinkedIn, etc., you can see your ad costs there, but then more importantly, the cost per conversion based on that, based on the number of conversions coming through. Also, the great benefit of GA4 is that it does look at cross network traffic. So if you have got people that are coming to your site from a number of different sources, it's obviously going to share that conversion across as a cross network conversion rather than just dumping it into paid search or this particular source medium that it's in. Yeah, so seeing percentages, is that percentages of like increase or decrease? Is that what you mean, Renee? If you're doing percentage of, oh, you're talking about percent. So if you're in a view like this, it gives you kind of like a percentage of that traffic that's coming from that particular channel group or particular source. No, they don't do that in GA4, which is unfortunate. I was actually using it yesterday when we were looking at a client, which gave us a quite clear picture of how much they were, how much traffic was coming from different channels, and then we were able to see that like 30% of their traffic was coming from organic search, organic Google search, and 20% was coming from paid, etc. So it's kind of a good little crib where you can just easily see that number. But no, they don't have it in GA4. They've kind of really simplified that reporting. It's a lot kind of cleaner and simpler look. Yeah, unfortunately. So yeah, so the performance report obviously lets you see conversions and then obviously cost per acquisition by those different channels. And then obviously the other good one is to look at like model comparison for attribution. So last click attribution is the last channel that they interacted with before they converted, and then data driven is Google's new kind of model, which looks at all the channels and allocates a percentage based on that channel's likelihood of getting that person to convert. And then you can obviously add other channels like first click into the report, so you can just sort of see what sort of behavior those people are having across the different channels and which one's attributing to the conversions. And then conversion paths. I think this is probably a good graph that they've sort of introduced in the GA4 reporting. It sort of quite clearly allows you to see which channels are contributing to kind of your early success in being found, which ones are helping kind of nudge that user along to conversion, and obviously which ones are finally getting that conversion. So quite visually you can see that organic is quite strong in the early to mid, and then obviously a lot of people coming back directly to the site because they're aware of it, or they're being found, or they're finding finding it via an online ad, potentially remarketing remarketing type ads to get them back to actually convert, to remind them of the product. So again, quite a nice visual, quite a good new graph in GA4 in that conversion paths tab under the advertising attribution tab. Right, so we'll just go through Looker Studio. just so we can sort of see what's available here. The section's not that long, so again, if you do have any questions on GA4, pop them in the chat, and then at the end I can kind of go through and answer any sort of specific cases that you might have. So Looker Studio, formerly Data Studio, always be Data Studio to me, is kind of Google's sort of free dashboarding tool. So all the Google channels, ads, analytics, YouTube, etc., analytics are all free data connectors, but they do have a lot of other paid data connectors from third parties that you can actually connect information, data into Looker Studio. So for example, Facebook, LinkedIn, Shopify, MailChimp, a whole bunch of others. So those are through third parties. Like one of the more popular ones is probably Supermetrics. So if you kind of want to build a report in Looker Studio and get information from Facebook or LinkedIn as well as Google, you're just going to have to pay for this third party data connector to get that information into the system. Righty ho. So to connect your GA4 to your Data Studio, so you'll just go to Data Studio. Sorry, there I go. It'll always be Data Studio to me. Go to Looker Studio. So just Google Looker Studio and then click Get Started. And then the first thing it'll have will be just create report. So if you create report, and then it'll ask you to set up a data connector. And so if you jump down, find the one that's Google Analytics. And so this will actually connect both Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, and GA4 properties. And then find your analytics account and find the property that you want to connect. So in this case, we're just using a Google Merch Shop GA4. And then it'll just create a table like this, which is event name and stuff. But you've got a whole bunch of different chart types to choose from. So you can have tables, tables with bars and colors, scorecards, time series, bar graphs, pie graphs, Google map charts, line and bar graphs, scatter plots, pivot tables, all sorts. So I just kind of put together a sample of some of the different report charts that we've got available. So this is just a table, and this kind of looks very similar to what we see in GA4 itself, event name, views, but we may want a line graph of our views over time. So we can just put in views in a time chart. So we've got this one here, which is, again, Google Universal Analytics used to have charts that look like this. They're not sort of in Google Analytics 4 anymore, where they might be quite useful for sort of seeing what percentage of traffic is coming from each source in this sort of view. So we can see obviously predominantly direct none, but organic and paid search are quite strong. Pie charts, geographic, which city are people coming from, or are these kind of gauge type graphs where you can set an amount, your target you're trying to reach, and then obviously you can how close are we to that target, are we over it, etc. So lots of different, again, experimentations and things you can do with Data Studio. Looker Studio. Questions? Open to questions. Just pop them in the chat if you want to get your burning question answered. I'm happy to jump into GA4 and look at them in there if you want me to do sort of any live examples of anything that you want to see. I can bring that up in a Google Analytics itself. So tracking form submissions in GA4. So there's a couple of ways you can do this. So the way we typically do it is we set up a trigger in Tag Manager for that form submission, and then that trigger fires a Google Analytics for event. So, but the other way to do it, which I can show you, I'm just jumping into the demo account. Probably won't let me create it. I'll just jump into a fake account. So this hasn't been installed on a website. So you can actually create conversions in the conversions tab. So if you just go across to the little cog at the bottom, and then under your property, you go to conversions, and you can set up a new conversion event, and you can call it form submission. Sorry, need to create the event first. Create the event. So you create the event. Called form submission, and then you can actually add in, say, the page title or the page location, and then this will be the address, of, say, your thank you page. So basically, every page view that has this thank you page, and then create. So that creates an event for this, and then we kind of did it backwards, and then you go in and create the conversion with that same event name. And so every time that event happens, it will trigger that event. But like I said, the way that we do it is we'll typically create in Tag Manager, we'll create a trigger, and then if for example, I mean, what website platform are you on, Braden? Because then we can just sort of like let you know how we do it. Because if you're on something sort of simple, you can just create a little custom script, which we can add on, and then just trigger that. So how to create standard conversion reports for only one conversion on Looker Studio, WordPress. So if you're on WordPress, like, it'll depend on the form builder you're using. So for example, if you're on something like Gravity Forms or Ninja Forms, or they'll typically have a confirmation message, and then we'll typically add just a little event script, a custom event script that will show up when that form is actually submitted, which will fire the in Google Tag Manager. So I'm happy to kind of send you a little bit of information about that, Braden, if you need some help with that. We've got Prabin, how to create a standard conversion report, specifically only one in Looker Studio. So that's pretty straightforward. So if you just want to have it where you're wanting to just see we'll just jump into Data Studio just so we can show that, because there's probably a few people that have a similar question. So I'm just going to set up that demo account as well, for the merch shop. Oh, I'm spelling it wrong. It's so tiny. Conversions. There we go. So we've got this. It's probably not a great example. No, no, Nathan. I haven't considered any other local streaming providers. Um, yeah, good to know. Good to have the feedback on the stream. Um, yeah, so it's the first one I've done using this streaming platform. So, but yeah, so if you've got the conversion events, you can sort of easily break down, say, um, by a scorecard, for example, and obviously look at obviously having just a conversion number there, and then filtering by that specific parameter that you've got. So only including um, those conversions that match that parameter. So again, happy to probably jump offline and help you through that. But that's kind of how I'd do it. I'd look at basically having a conversion and then obviously just finding that conversion um, that you want to track. So any other questions? I'm sure there's probably people that have questions that everyone else has got that same question. Cool. Well, if no one else has got any other questions, we can probably just push on. So, there's obviously a few people that need some help with a couple of things. Feel free to reach out, and we can obviously go through that in a bit more detail and try and help you out where you need that. But some of the ways we can help out, we can obviously check to make sure you've got your Google Analytics 4 set up correctly. So if you're unsure about whether you're recording the correct data, whether you've got conversions set up correctly, whether you're tracking the right events, the way you're tracking the events, just reach out and ask. We can have a quick look at your GA4 account and make sure you're tracking the things that you want to track. If you haven't set up, obviously, GA4 yet, obviously we've only got 9 days to go before um, before basically Universal Analytics finishes. So, you know, chop chop. Let me know. We can try and squeeze you in somewhere to get you set up. If not, this side of June and July, early July at some stage. Again, if you've got any questions around reporting, obviously, if you want to set up any like Looker Studios, we can give you some pointers or help with any custom reporting. Or if you're running any online ads, obviously it's important to make sure you're measuring things correctly. We can obviously come in and look at doing an account audit, make sure you're getting the performance that you're wanting, make sure it's connected with GA4 correctly so that's optimizing the campaigns. Otherwise, thanks for coming along. I think we got through everything um, that we wanted to in terms of the GA4. Um, if you have any ideas for any other webinar topics, feel free to email me. As I said, the slides and the webinar will be online on YouTube, so you can grab those and watch those again. And it'd be really great. Like we always love good feedback. This was a free event we decided to put on. Obviously, a lot of our clients asking questions about GA4 and how do I look at it, like how do I get information from it. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to do a webinar. There's going to be tons of people out there that kind of want this information, and so put it on for free to get the information out there. But we'd really love if you gave us a review. Just head across to review.unbound.nz. Got some suggestions there. You don't have to use them, but if you want some ideas about giving us a review, um, here's some ideas for you now. Thanks everyone for coming along. As I said, if you've got any questions, feel free to email me. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day.